It's talked about 24/7, 365 in the state of Alabama. Regardless of the season, regardless of the time, they're talking football. And when they talk football, they talk rivalry. And the rivalry, the one that's cared about, is first and foremost the Iron Bowl, an in-state rivalry like no other. Auburn and Alabama. We got Joe Hunk on the line from 7:40 a.m. The Fallout is his show. Joe, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, and you're not wrong. You're not wrong. This is a 24/7 thing, and it's majority of the time it is football. But now with Auburn making it to the Final Four, with Auburn making it to the College World Series in baseball, and even with Alabama being great at softball, it's starting to roll into all the other sports as well. In fact, here in Montgomery, we are about 500 yards away from a baseball stadium called Riverwalk Stadium where the Montgomery Biscuits play. And every single year they do a game that does not count towards their SEC standings. And Alabama and Auburn play a baseball game there, and it's sold out. And there's 8,000 or 9,000 fans that are there. The pep bands are there for both of them, all mascots, both play-by-play voices, and everything is there. I mean, this is a 24/7 thing. And trust me, as excited as so many people are for Thanksgiving, it's going to be trash talking the entire time. It's how it is. It's, hey, how's your family? How's your kids? Now, what do you think is happening on Saturday?
Yeah, I worked in the SEC for 6 years, and one particular summer, I'd gone home to Ohio for the week to visit my family. I was driving back from Ohio, and I'm just scanning around for sports talk, music, whatever. I hit some sports talk. I'm in the middle of Tennessee, driving along. It's June. Mm-hmm. It is so far removed from anything college football related. No spring football, no real football, nothing. People are arguing about Auburn and Alabama. The show is dedicated to yep. Alabama and Auburn. Who's better? Who's got the better history? Who's got the better this, that? Who's going to win the game this year? The whole thing.
Well, and what people don't realize about this rivalry is, look, they played each other back in the early 1900s, and then there was a period of time where they stopped because they couldn't have an agreement on officials, which is funny because everybody complains about officials now. But the only way this game actually happened is because the government stepped in. There was this ceremony where everybody wanted to bury a hatchet, which apparently somewhere in the state of Alabama, under probably a lot of dirt, there is a hatchet that was somewhere buried between like the student body presidents of the universities. And this game's been played ever since. And you have everything from they wanting to argue over officials to the games that were taking place inside of Legion Field all the way up until 89, that's when Auburn decided to start playing their home games when they were the home team actually in Jordan-Hare Stadium where the game's going to be played on Saturday, to everything from the kick six and all of this. There's a big history here, and there is a lot of hatred, and there's a lot of fans that their Saturday's either going to be made or it's going to be ruined based on what happens at 2:30 on CBS.
Seems like anytime I see a poll taken, best rivalry in college football, and I'm going to take Army and Navy out of it because there's just a different element there, obviously, and there's a level of respect that we just push that in another category. It seems as though one of two rivalries wins the poll by a landslide. Mm-hmm. These two rank up there. And it depends on where you are in the country. And if you're not in either geographical area, just whatever your perception is, how good the teams have been recently. But it seems like Ohio State and Michigan and Auburn and Alabama rule the best rivalry debate. Those are the only two that are considered. And really, there's no real relevant validation for any other. There are great rivalries. I want to say that straight out. I love rivalry week. I think this distinguishes college football above the other sports, that the rivalries are so ingrained in the sport and everybody's got one. You can start in the northwest part of the country, Washington State, Oregon State. You can go right down the coast. You can go through the country. Everybody's got a big rival, and I would love to watch all the games, but you just can't. So everybody's got their regional or state rivalry that is huge, historic. Yeah. Those just seem to be the two that battle it out when you talk national prominence.
Well, and there's a little bit of a bleed over between Michigan and Ohio State, but you also have state unity to an extent where, yes, in Michigan, you do have Michigan State fans and things like that. Here in the state of Alabama, you're one or the other. On Saturday, when I sit down and watch the Iron Bowl with either my family or my wife's family, I am the only Auburn fan. I just am. It is a bunch of Alabama fans and myself. And so you live this thing 24/7. It's always happening. And with Ohio State and Michigan, it's a little different because you actually have a state that's kind of unified. And for me growing up my entire life in this state, for 35 years, I've always been in houses divided, relationships divided, families divided, all of that. So it's never been one where I'm kind of used to everybody liking the same thing. Over the summer, I went and took a trip up to Kansas City, and everybody there were all Chiefs fans. And I was like, wait a second. So like everybody in the city cheers for the same team? Like that's so unique to me because it's not that way here. You are one or the other, and you're making those allegiances, and it's going to be extremely fun, or it's going to be one where you're gonna hate it for a good period of time because you're gonna get the bragging are all gonna happen on Saturday, and you hear it all the time regardless.
And it's a great distinguishing factor you make. Now that we're a little bit more fluid in society and people get around a little bit more, maybe it's slightly different. But yes, people in Ohio live in Ohio.
Yep.
Those people in Michigan are in Michigan. We don't rub elbows with them. We don't see them. So when we talk best rivalry, I think there's a debate. When we talk most bitter rivalry, I think this is the one.
Oh yeah, there's hatred. I mean, there absolutely is hatred, and there's things that you can talk about throughout the whole period of time. Is you can talk about Bear Bryant and going back to when he got the record for the most all-time wins. It's not that he got the record; it's because he got the record against Auburn, and that made it just a little bit sweeter for Alabama fans that took place. You can go through and you can look at the winning streaks that Alabama and Auburn have had that have ended in the Iron Bowl, whether you look at the 92 and 93 Alabama teams and Auburn whenever they went undefeated and then losing to Alabama. And you can go back and forth through this whole thing. And even going into the more recent history from the fact that you had, Nick Saban and this Alabama team came into Jordan-Hare Stadium in 2009, and it came down to what is now known as the Drive. I mean, look, I don't know if it's like this in any other states, but we basically have our own artist that will make pictures dedicated to this. And it's now, you will hear this phrase at some point in time, there's your Daniel A. Moore painting right there. And it's because living off of making all these paintings that every single Alabama and Auburn fan have in their house, whether it is the kick six, whether it is bow over the top, whether it's punt Bama punt, or and those are all the Auburn ones, or if it is the kick for Alabama or the drive for Alabama when it was Greg McElroy and those, like you have all these paintings, and he's made a living just painting Alabama and Auburn. And that's just how this rivalry is always going to be, is you're going to talk about this game 24/7. People basically, you can go in any store, any restaurant, any bar, anything, somebody's going to have a story about where they were for some particular Alabama Auburn game. And that's kind of what makes this special. And you have this connection through families for generations and generations where, I was talking to somebody before this, and she has a friend of hers who he's only known success because he just graduated high school, and he's, basically just been alive and knowing football through this Nick Saban years. And then you have Auburn fans that if they've been, let's say they're around in their mid-20s, they remember a period of time where people were like, why are you an Alabama fan again? Because Auburn's kicked your tail for 6 straight years. And then you can go through and it's every single generation, that period and that connection with the fan bases. And it's interesting to kind of see how each individual family member became an Alabama or Auburn fan.
Christmas is coming, folks. Shop Amazon using the link in the description section below. Same shopping experience, but you help us build the channel. Joe Hunk on the line from the Fallout 740. We have a good time talking Auburn and Alabama with Joe on a regular basis. This time we just talk about them all put together because we're on the field for the Iron Bowl, and this is obviously a must-see for college football fans. So when we look at the 2019 matchup, to bring it up to date, Auburn, of course, losing 3 games, Alabama with 1 loss to LSU with an outside shot at getting to the college football playoff. no championship on the line within the SEC. For this one, does that diminish it? And then just kind of get to the matchups in regards to how you see this playing out and in regards to advantages on both sides.
Well, there's a little bit of a uniqueness about this game because it is the first time since 2011 that the winner of this game isn't going to play in the SEC championship, and so it's kind of weird to be able to say that, but at the exact same time, for Alabama, there's a lot more on the line, but there's also a lot more question marks. And as there's two players that, if you are Alabama, that this game is going to come down to these two, and it's going to be Mac Jones and Najee Harris. And you have an offense that was built around Tua, and an offense that has looked tremendous under Tua. But Mac Jones really hasn't done much with this offense to date because we don't really know what he's capable of this. And, you can look at the games that he has started, whether it was Arkansas, Western Carolina last week, those were horrible opponents to be playing in. You go and you look at the game that he came in against Tennessee, where he was not ready. He didn't even think about the possibility of him going in. He did not prepare on the sidelines. We hear a lot of times of this, you got to prepare like you're the starter, and I'm the starter, and you got to prepare for it even if you are the backup. He didn't do that week. And so mentally you saw that he wasn't there. And so you were able to see a little bit of the progression from Tennessee to Arkansas whenever Tua wasn't there. But even if you go and look at Mississippi State, this offense really didn't do that much with Mac Jones. And so Najee Harris is going to be possibly the key to this for Alabama because of how successful, and he's now in that role that we've seen so many other Alabama running backs go into, whether it was Bo Scarborough, whether it was Eddie Lacy, whether it was even, not Derrick Henry, but you even look at last year with Josh Jacobs, is that back that wasn't used that much in the beginning of the season, but now towards the very end is starting to get those carries and become a big piece of it. Look, Josh Jacobs, people in the NFL are in love with Josh Jacobs. He's probably going to be the offensive rookie of the year. He was the third string running back last year for Alabama, but he had a very good last month for Alabama, and that's what propelled him into him being drafted in the NFL, falling in love with him. And so now Najee Harris is kind of in that role. And so to me, that's the important part with Alabama, is being able to get him the ball. And the great thing is for him is he's great from catching the football out of the backfield as well as being able to run it. And it's going to take a little bit of pressure off of Mac Jones. But Auburn's plan is probably going to be put as much pressure on Mac Jones, and let's see which one he's going to do. Is he going to be able to throw for 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdown passes, or is he going to be throwing 2 or 3 interceptions?
Bo Nix made up for an uneven performance against Oregon in the opener, but with a last-second touchdown pass and the big comeback from 15 down, and especially considering it was his first start, the Florida game was a bit ugly for the most part. He's had a lot of those 50% passing type games against good teams. Have you seen him get better?
He has gotten better to an extent, and unfortunately, he's always going to be the focal point of everything. And and it's sad to say this if you are an Auburn fan, there were Auburn fans that were booing Bo Nix after Joey Gatewood transferred. And they were booing Malzahn, but they also kind of turned at it and looked at Bo. And so Bo's had to handle that off the field. But with Bo, there has been this, he's having to figure things out. And you can kind of see whenever it comes to the play, and how once the play is called in and he starts to know what he's going to do at the offensive line, you can kind of see it clicking a little bit more with him and making smarter decisions. For him, it's all about making smarter decisions. Auburn's not looking for him to be a Heisman winner. They're looking for him to be a game manager. And in 2019, with the amount of RPOs that Auburn loves to run, the game managing starts before you even get the football in your hands, because you're having to read the defense in that way. And so for him, this is a lot of growing up. Now, he understands it. He is getting better. And there are times where we see him play very well. And I think that now through this, because of the way that the RPO has been introduced in college football and used so much over the past couple of 2 or 3 years and so much this season, it makes it very hard for the quote unquote casual fan to understand and be able to criticize play calling, because if Bo hands the football off, they automatically think, well, why aren't you calling any passing plays? If he's throwing the short slant routes, wait a second, why didn't you run the football because of this? And so it's kind of a no-win situation, but a lot of this comes down to his pre-snap reads and making the decision before he even snaps the football. And I think that kind of hurts it when it comes to trying to grade Bo Nix in this, because a lot of it is needing the play sheet right there and going, okay, this was an RPO. Did you make the right decision or not? And it's harder for people that obviously don't know what the play calling is to see, is he making the right decision or not? And when I say that, I mean every single person outside of Gus Malzahn who knows what the play call is, it actually is, because we don't know. And so we're having to guess it based on what we see when watching the football game. So he's in a unique situation in this, but he has grown as a quarterback. And even I think that in 2 or 3 years, this guy is going to be an amazing quarterback. He's just put into a very bad situation right now. He's in a horrible situation because he can't win. And now if he does win on Saturday, then you start talking about a Bo Nix legacy that Auburn fans are going to love. But at this point in time, they're still, I don't want to say they're angry at Bo Nix in this offense. I think that a lot of Auburn fans are upset about how amazing the defense is and feeling that it's being wasted on this offense at this moment.
Alabama's 10-1. They've got the outside shot at the playoff. Auburn is playing for pride. Of course, the rivalry means everything, but there are various bowl implications as well. So where do you think the incentive lies? It seems to lie with Alabama. Bama's the better squad to a certain extent, you would think, a touchdown to 10 points, but you put Mac Jones in there instead of Tua. And maybe we've got an interesting affair here. What do you think is going to decide it?
I want to say Mac Jones, but I think it's actually containing Najee Harris. If you're on Auburn, I think that is what's going to be the deciding factor for Auburn when it comes to their playmaking, is containing Najee Harris and making sure that he's not going to get the yards. Because if you do that, then you are going to force Mac Jones to try to make some decisions. And you go back and even watch the Mississippi State game, they scored all of their points before Tua got injured. And so now it is can he handle this atmosphere? And don't get it wrong. And this is also kind of a spot where Ohio State and Michigan's a little different. As difficult as it is to go into the Horseshoe and play in Ohio State, it's very difficult to go into Bryant-Denny and play. It's even harder to go in Jordan-Hare and play when it's at night and you have this atmosphere that you're going to have. And I say at night because now, it starts getting dark at 4:30. So there's only going to be about the first half of this game that's actually going to be in the sunlight. And so that, to me, for Auburn's side of this, stopping Najee Harris is the important thing, because if I'm a defensive coordinator and I'm Kevin Still, I'm going to say, look, if Mac Jones throws 4 touchdowns and throws 400 yards passing, then all the best of luck to him. But the strategy that Auburn had in 2017 was make Jalen Hurts throw the football, and that's the reason why they won, because they knew that he couldn't do it. And I feel like that's going to be a similar strategy that you're going to see on Saturday.
Should be fascinating with Auburn taking on Alabama. And no Tua, it's Mac Jones, of course, in play for the Tide. And Alabama still holding out hopes of getting to a college football playoff a la 2017 with the 1 loss and 11-1 record. But Auburn looking to spoil it and up their bowl chances in the hierarchy of SEC bowl games and possibly get to a New Year's Six. Is that being talked about at all?
I think that right now with the 3 losses, I know that most likely you're looking at a January bowl. I think the bowl game that's getting talked about the most is the Citrus Bowl down in Orlando. But if you turn this around and you have a win against an Alabama team who's one of the top 5 teams in the country, you go into championship week with a 9-3 record. You're also probably going to be somewhere around a top 10, top 12 team. Then you start looking at the potential of gut. I don't think they're going to make a New Year's Six bowl because I don't think the record is good enough at this point in time. But you really could see them being that Citrus Bowl game in Orlando could be a really good spot for them, because if LSU's playing in the college football playoff and Alabama is going to be the team that's going to be playing in the Sugar Bowl, because the way that the new agreement has been made, which is a dumb agreement, but it's an agreement, was the Big 12 champion and the SEC champion are supposed to be playing each other in the Sugar Bowl every single year for what they're calling the Bowl of Champions. But obviously, majority of the time, the SEC champion is going and playing the college football playoff, and the Big 12 champion's done the same thing. So what we could see this year is we could see that Alabama versus Oklahoma matchup that we thought we was going to get in the national championship game, but it may actually be in New Orleans for the actual Sugar Bowl instead, because most likely you're going to see Georgia playing in the New Year's Six as well, depending on what happens to them in the SEC championship game.
Joe Hunk, The Fallout is his show on 7:40 a.m. in Montgomery, Alabama. Joe, we appreciate it. Hope you're still comfortable enjoying the game despite being surrounded by Alabama fans.
Surrounded, man. There's not one other Auburn fan I got. I'm a blue and orange guy in the sea of crimson, man.
Good stuff. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Joe, and we'll see you soon.
Happy Thanksgiving, man.